So we have a brand new Maxx here, and what we're going to do is we are going to take it to bits before we even run it. Let's see how good Traxxas are at actually making these trucks. We've found diffs and things are a little bit underfilled, various screws are loose, but we usually run them first, so let's take it to bits. Let's have a look. I'm not going to do a full build teardown video, but we will do and show what's good and what isn't so good. Right, so enough waffle. Let's have a quick look. Wheel nuts. I'd always check them anyway. Oh, well, there's an 1/8 of a turn on them, so let's try that one as well. Yeah, could have done them a bit better, Traxxas, but wheel nuts, you really should check them after every run. Another area, gluing the tyres. Well, again, they look on there pretty well, don't they? That's only one of them, but all four are pretty much the same. And now I'm going to get the shocks off. Let's have a look, see how well they are built up. Shocks all off. How good are Traxxas at building these? Let's have a look. Here's a front one. Small amount of oil residue around there, but the oil feels full. There's no little air movement, or there's no little free movement at the top. What rebound they set it with? Small amount. This one the same. Again, small amount of oil there. No rebound on that one. Not a massive issue, I don't think. Here's a rear one. We've got quite a bit more rebound on that one. Maximum shock spring compression on that one. And here's another rear one. And it's about the same on the as the other rear one. So, what do we give Traxxas marks out of 10 building shocks? Probably a 7 out of 10. But for a basher, that's not too bad. At least they're not leaking loads of oil, which I have seen on some trucks. So we'll put these back together and we'll have a look at some other bits on the truck. Okay, so initial thoughts on the suspension. All moves up and down freely. The other side does the same. Look at this play. Can you see that on there? The wobble on there. But it is only a hobby truck, so we suppose we shouldn't complain. The back's even worse. I think it's some of the worst we've seen. But that's not really how well it's been built. That's just the quality of the parts, I think. We could probably put a shim in there, but we'll have a look. Now I'm just going to look, see if all these bolts and bearings are all good. Right, guys, so all the axles are off the truck. All seems okay. These bearings are quite a loose fit into here, but again, that's not really a built-up issue. That's just a fitment of parts. We have also just taken out one of the bearing shields. You can see there's quite a decent bit amount of grease in there, so I'm quite happy with that. They seem to be reasonable bearings. Nothing much else to report, really. All these were tight on here. I mean, it's plastic into plastic. There's no nuts or bolts to be not particularly loose. There is a little bit of play again. There's a bits of play in all this moulding, the way they all fit together, but not too much of an issue. So that's reasonably okay. So again, on this part, Traxxas, probably, I'd say 9 out of 10 on that. That's all good. You will notice I've actually put a little bit of thread lock on the axles, but you've got nylock nuts, so that's belt and braces. But as we showed earlier, the wheel nuts could have done with just being a little bit tighter. But I'm going to put these corners back together and we'll get to some other bits. Right, guys, so I took this centre brace, centre front brace, whatever you want to call it. That's all come off. They all seemed okay. It is obviously holding in the steering parts, so we will have a look at that in a minute. Don't forget you've got a bearing that's come off there, so we will have a look at that. What I really want to get to is the diffs. See how well they've done the diffs. So let's get this front bulkhead area off. All comes to part very easily. Some of that play I was talking about there, we could probably put a shim or something in there, but not too worried about that. Let's get that diff out. There she goes. Put the screws out of the way. What have Traxxas done? Let's have a look. How much grease have we got in there? Well, there's a reasonable amount of grease, I suppose, in there. Not much on the gears. It all seems to be on the diff case. Let's have a look at the pinion gear. Well, yeah, they have put grease in there. I don't know if they've put enough in there. We'll see. But what I would like to really look at is how much oil they've put in here. So let's have that out next. First job, we could take all these drive shafts off, but I don't need to. I'm just going to whiz off these 4 screws. One wasn't very tight. Moment of truth. What are we going to find in here? Will there be much oil? We see again, Traxxas, why don't you put more oil in there? There's not really enough oil in that diff. It needs to be covering those cross pins. It's barely covering the bottom gear down there. So we need more oil in these diffs. Why do they do that? Every truck I've had, they've been stingy on the oil they put in the diffs. Glad we checked it. So I'm just going to top that up. Don't need to show you how to do it. I'm going to top that up and get that back together. And that will be the front diff investigated. So, Traxxas, diff build. 3 out of 10. Don't like that. Right, Traxxas, we've rebuilt the diff properly now. And I'm also just going to put a little bit more of what the grease I use. This is what is this? This is Dynamite Marine grease. It's just what we had in the workshop, but I found it works really well on these big scale trucks. So I'm putting a little bit more grease around the ring gear. I know most of it flies off, but at least I know what's in there. And then I'm just going to put this back together. So I haven't got so many parts laying about on the bench. Look, we're already starting to collect quite a few bits. And I don't really want to forget what bit goes where, because I haven't looked at any of the exploded diagrams. But I'll get this screwed back together, and then I think we'll have a look at the steering. Diff back in, that's all good now. Let's have a look at this steering. There's not a massive amount you can do. What I'd actually like to do is, in fact, we'll do that. Once we've got it all together, we'll do that. I'll take that off, see how free it feels. Now, the only bits really I can adjust, well, you can't do anything with the servo saver spring. You don't want to do anything with that with the standard servo. These all move freely. You can feel that on the rose joints. The only thing I can look at is this centre link. Now, I've been saying about tightening screws. I'm actually just going to loosen this off just literally a fraction of a turn. And you can just feel that feels looser. It just moves much freer. So that actually was just a fraction tight. And I've only just a small amount. Don't want to do too much or you get play. So that's all we're going to do with that. And that is the steering done. In fact, that's actually the front end done, isn't it? There we go, guys. Front end almost back together. Now, the only other thing I'm going to look at on the front end of this, I am just going to take the steering link out, this mount here, because I want to see just how free the steering is without the servo on. If I can actually move that out. I think I can. Yeah, there we go. So, does this feel free? Yeah, that's not too bad. That's not binding up at all. See, we've got the hubs moving, and I can feel that with my hand. That's free. That's not binding up at all. So that's good. So, that's the front end done. I'm happy with it. So, other than the diff, it was all pretty good. It was not too bad. The shocks are okay, certainly for this level of truck. So, let's just finish off the front end back together, and then we'll have a look at the rear. Right, let's have this spur gear cover off first, I think. Alright, there we go. So, we've got the cush drive assembly here. There's not really a lot you can do to build that up badly, is there? Let's just have a quick check of these bolts. Yeah, they're all okay, aren't they? You've also got a plastic spur gear on this, which makes it nice and quiet. There isn't a lot of grease in here, is there? You'd expect to be a bit more grease on that gear down there. So we'll put a little bit more on there in a minute. So let's then get this rear diff out. I bet you haven't put enough oil in it again, Traxxas. Here we go, guys. Moments of truth. Right, so again, there ain't a lot of grease around this, is there? So there's clearly a shortage of grease in Maxx or Traxxas world. Now, let's have this off. What do you reckon? Bugger all oil in it? Oh, I reckon there isn't much in it. Da. What do we reckon? Ooh, there's a little bit more in that. And obviously this is very thick oil. I know it's very thick oil. And why can't they put that amount of grease in all of them? I'd say that's still a fraction low. Sorry, oil. Although it's really a thick oil, grease, whatever you want to call it. It is quite low, but that's not too bad. You can see that glisten? It's covering those pins. I'm happy with that. But the front one was nowhere near that. So, I ain't going to worry about that. I'm quite happy with that. So I'm just going to torque these bolts back up. And then, so I actually didn't know, wasn't 100% sure if this had a centre diff in it or not. But clearly it has. Look at all the grease around there. That's not doing any good around there, is it? So let's whack out these screws. What do you reckon, guys? Is it going to be like the front or is it going to be like the rear? They're all undone. Ready? Ready? We need to get into there. We need to get into there. Let's try not to damage anything. Pull that shaft off. Now again, this is a very thick putty, and there is some in there. I'd say it's in between the rear and the front. It's got some in it, but we will put a little bit more in there, because that does take quite a bashing. But okay, so Traxxas, we will score you, what will we score you? 4 out of 10 on the front diff, rear diff 9 out of 10. I say in the middle diff 7 out of 10. The amount of grease you're putting on the gears, well, 7 out of 10. I would like to see a little bit more. So let's get this back together, and then we can start getting the truck back together, and we might even be able to give it a rip. Well, guys, back end's almost back together. Just going to put on these drive shafts. Now, see that little cross mark there? Make sure you line that up with the corresponding mark on here. Otherwise, these don't go on. They're a real tight fit, as I found out on the front. But we've worked that one out now. And also, these are handed. There's an L and an R. Can you see the L there? So make sure you get them on the right way around. So we'll just get the back end back together. And, well, that's nearly the truck done. We'll just have a look at some of the centre parts, some electrics on it, I think. Right, guys, so we've pretty much got the truck back together, apart from the centre section here. Now, one thing I am going to just quickly look at is this pinion grub screw. Have they put any thread lock on it? I'd like to see this quite well. Wow, that's barely done up. Is there any thread lock on that? There's a little bit, not a lot. So we'll put some more thread lock on that. Very important thing, that is, because you don't want that coming loose, because you'll just... Well, you've got no drive, have you? Look, just spin around like that. No good whatsoever. So that's a thumbs down for Traxxas. Alright, bit of thread lock on there. Make sure you tighten it up on the flat of the motor. Very important. So then we'll pop back in our centre drive. And we'll close that back up. Right, so let's check the thing works properly, shall we? Obviously tarmac isn't its home. We haven't... It's got a lot of weaving on the tarmac. Now we've actually just come from using Maxxs and XRTs, and this is so unstable.
Mine was still dialed, it's
oh, that was going to go over, wasn't it? Oh, yeah, you can see those full brakes. The front wants to go over. Oh, right.
It's lucky there's no grip, so it can't roll. Otherwise, that'd be going.
Oh, it'd be tumbles, yes. Right, guys, I think that's pretty much going to be it. We know it works. It's fine. We want to get it off-road now, so that's it. Yeah. And we're going to get run over by a car. So that's it for today.